Hey, everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian, and I am broadcasting live from the GFQ studios in Los Angeles, also known as the TBT studios. This is a studio that we use to record The Bald Truth every week. And, of course, with me, as always, Paul, the man who hates the number 9, Thurrot.
How you doing?
Paul?
Pretty good.
I am doing good. Very surprised. That was the biggest surprise out of all this stuff that came out of the announcement on Tuesday. Yeah. And that's a question that I've been getting all week.
What question?
Why 10?
Why? Honestly, the real answer is just for perception. They really believe people to think that this is a major advance over Windows 8 and is not Windows 8. Although I will keep reminding people that this thing is Windows 8.2 and nothing they do from here until next year is going to change that. This is just, even the notion that, look, it's going to run everything from the Internet of Things up to phones, up to tablets, up to PCs, up to workstations, up to Xbox. Yep, just like today. That is not new. So, I appreciate the need to differentiate it. I think Windows 9 would have sent that same message, but I think they were trying to, take it a step further and say, look, it's so big, so different that we had to call it Windows 10, and it really isn't. It really isn't.
I made the joke. I made the joke on when I was flying. I was in the air when this entire thing was happening, and I saw you write Windows 1, right? Like I think you were like guessing names.
No, I wasn't.
Didn't really.
He was. Okay. If you go back and watch the presentation, he was joking and saying, "So we're going to reveal the name," and he went through the list of. Windows 9, and then he said, would have been the obvious name, but, and then he kind of made a joke of it. So he said Windows 9, he said Windows 1, he said just Windows, and then Windows 10. All the ones, all the names.
It would not have been a bad thing, right? If it was Windows 1.
I think that's a terrible name.
Okay.
And the reason is...
Here's my justification, okay?
Okay.
Because it's one unified UI, and it's going to be the platform
it's not one,
across
but it's
everything.
Not. It's literally not one unified UI. It's not one unified API. It's not any of that stuff. It's not. But that doesn't matter. That's not the point. The HTC one is a terrible name because next year you have to come out with the HTC what? The HTC 2, what they did was they came out with the HTC One M8. And it's like, what?
M8 1 plus.
That's why, because 1 is a terrible name because it's a number. It's a terrible name.
So they announced 10, and like I was writing, I'm like, well, I guess Windows 8 was so bad for them, and the public perception of Windows 8 was so bad that they want to make this thing so far away in the distant past where we've gone over 2 versions already. Like, oh, yeah, Windows 9. Yeah, nobody ever remembered Windows 9, but Windows 8 is so far away. Like, is that actually like a legitimate reason that they had? Was that to separate themselves from 8 to the point that they've skipped the version number?
I don't know. Seriously, there is no reason. It's just perception. They just literally want to differentiate it. If you look at the version number is 6.4. The version number of Windows 8.1 is 6.3. It's just the next version. It's not a new thing. It's not a re-architecting of the kernel or the underlying platform. It's not a new apps platform. Even the name Universal Apps is complete bullshit. You're not creating one app that runs on Windows Phone, that runs on Windows, that runs on Xbox. You're creating one solution in Visual Studio that creates 3 different apps. Actually, it could create as many as 5 different apps, depending on how you do it. So it's just about perception. This is all, it's not a big deal. I think, for most people, the notion that you'll have a similar, maybe even nearly identical experience on a phone, a tablet, on a PC, on an Xbox, not a bad thing. You may run an app that looks very similar across those platforms. It doesn't mean they're all the same thing. It doesn't matter. I think to the user, as long as it's all close enough, that's what matters. And so I wouldn't get bogged down in the technical.
So this is Windows 8.2, and they were going to release it as 9, and now it's going to be 10.
Well,
right?
Windows,
that's pretty much what it is.
Windows 8.2 could have been Windows 8.1 plus the start menu, Okay. I think they wisely, now that I've seen it, held off. And of course, there's other stuff coming that we haven't seen yet. But I think they wisely held off on the start menu because I think it makes more cohesive sense with this release, which is designed to be a good upgrade for Windows 7 users, right, who have a start menu and use the desktop only, and also for Windows 8 users who are a mix of desktop and mobile device use. And honestly, the biggest success story I see in this thing is that it does appear to be, or will be, I guess, in the case of the tablet, that thing a good upgrade for both. Even those two kinds of systems are very different.
Because I've missed out on a lot of this stuff because I'm traveling this week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask you some pretty dumb questions. I ask you some pretty dumb questions on a regular basis, but these are gonna be, for the layman.
Okay.
So Windows 10 is now delayed. The April release is no longer happening.
Well, yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because from what I read, it was later 2015.
So, yeah, it's not clear when in 2015. So the way Terry Myerson described the schedule off the top of my head was that this was the first step, the first chapter, whatever, enterprises, although precious little in the way of enterprise information. The next one would be consumer stuff early in 2015. And then they have build in April, which is the developer event. And then he said, when we'll ship it sometime, later in 2015, I think was how he said it. That night when we were up in Petaluma, I think, Mary Jo said she had heard it was mid 2015, but I'm not positive, but I'm relatively certain he never actually said that. The thing that's happened since then that makes me doubt the schedule is we're now hearing that there's going to be a developer-oriented release in November. And if that's the case, they might not necessarily be waiting until April for developer, which is build, and they might very well be releasing it at build in April. So we'll see. I think that's still all up in the air.
It's still up. Yeah. Because it's not so much April, right? Like the April release is not so much the big deal. It's meeting back to school and allowing time for the OEMs to create the hardware to go along with some of the changes. That's to me the more important part. I don't care if it's coming out in April or May or June. It should come out before September.
Yeah, so I think it should come out well before that, to be honest. I think that the key for this thing to be a big deal is for it to come out in time for back to school and for the holidays. So if they ship this thing in September, October, like they've been doing, I'm not actually positive that's a great idea. So we'll see. As far as the hardware goes, the one thing that actually came through loud and clear on here is that, unlike with Windows 8, where when that thing came out, there was this notion of, well, we're going to have new kinds of computers. We're going to have tablets. We're going to have tablets that have keyboards you can attach and they turn into Ultrabooks. And, we think of this category as 2-in-1 today, but I differentiate between 2-in-1s and the types, like a convertible where you can flip the screen around. I think there's different types of devices. With Windows 10, there are no new devices. Obviously, there'll be underlying platform things. The Intel stuff will improve as they do. But honestly, this is them sort of re-embracing 2-in-1s. There's going to be a mode of some sort in Windows 10 designed specifically for 2-in-1s, where you plug in the keyboard.
Have they said what that is exactly?
Yeah, so they don't have it ready in the preview, but the feature's called, I think it was Continuum, and it will basically switch the computer between different modes. We don't know what the touch mode is going to be like exactly. In this version, you still see the charms. The switcher's been turned off. That's going away. But they're going to revamp that somehow. So we'll have something like charms for touch. But the point is, if you're used to a Windows 8 tablet, it will work a lot like it does in Windows 10. But when you plug in the keyboard, it will act like we see here in the first preview, where you get a start menu, floating windows on the desktop, and that kind of thing.
So it's going to behave exactly the way that you had wanted it to behave when you spoke about Windows 8, 4 years ago.
Yep.
This is what we've been talking about for years, where you want something where it's intelligent enough to know when you dock it to a keyboard, it goes into a certain mode. When you undock it and you walk around with it, now it's a tablet, and that's all you're going to do, and you forget about desktop.
I think so. They showed a very early peek at that. And we'll see. We'll see how it looks. They're going to get feedback from people, and some of that feedback will determine how this looks. But yes, I mean, I think that's the theory. Yeah.
Now, you've been running Windows 10 for about a day and a half now.
Yeah, not even. Yeah.
Not even.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get home until dinner time last night. So
Sure. As far as stability goes, is this a stable, I guess, beta?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I could say that, right? I've installed it on multiple devices. Yeah, I mean, by and large, there's occasional weird things. I go into the personalized control panel, change the background image, click OK, and then the background goes black. That kind of thing. Goofy small things like that.
Yeah.
I do have one machine where the trackpad isn't working properly. I haven't investigated that yet. I mean, I noticed that plugging in a mouse actually fixed the problem, so it's very specific to the trackpad. But their advice is sound, and their advice was basically like, look, if you question this at all, you shouldn't be installing it. It's a beta. It's incomplete.
It's a beta.
It's a better experience on a traditional computer than it is on a tablet because they've only half started modifying the tablet UIs, the Edge UIs, the Touch UIs. Whereas I feel like the desktop stuff is more fully baked, So if you have a regular laptop.
Did they hint at the future of RT and what they're going to do with that? Because this is going to be their core foundation for everything that they're doing in 2015, right. 16. I'm assuming, over the next 2-3 years, this is the core. This is their outlook for the future of Windows. Was there any hint at how they're going to modify Windows Phone and how they're going to modify RT?
There was, okay, so there was one hint. There was a small hint. And actually, if you look at, there's a graphic that they put up on the screen that they actually have provided as a full res screenshot as well, which shows all of the devices on which Windows 10 is going to run. The first one is like a Galileo type developer board, like a Windows IoT kind of, sensor-based headless little gadget thing. The next one's a phone, and then the next one is a small tablet, and then a regular tablet, and a 2-in-1. It goes up from there. The thing that they released, yesterday now, is designed for tablets, big tablets, PCs, and workstations. Next year, they're going to talk about phone and small tablets, which is going to be the same OS. It's going to be the future of RT and phone combined. But there's actually kind of a hint of what it's going to look like because you can see the screens, and it shows you how they have like a portrait start screen as do the machines today. They're not going to have a start menu, obviously. They're not going to have a desktop, and so that's. But they didn't really talk about it. One thing you can't see, unfortunately, is that at the event they had a Q&A session at the end, which they said they weren't going to do. And Mary Jo Foley asked about Windows RT and about ARM devices, and they then answered only about phones. They said nothing about tablets. In fact, she was very specifically asking about tablets and the Surface 2. And they just answered the question as if she talked about phones. And we were standing there kind of shaking our heads. And when he was done, I leaned into her and I said, he didn't answer your question at all. And she said, nope, it had nothing to do with what I asked.
So I mean, desktop is going to be gone from RT. Is that the assumption here?
Yeah. So I don't know what they call this thing. We don't know. I actually, if I was going to guess today, I would say there's going to be this thing called Windows 10, but just Windows. In the sense that we have Windows 8 or Windows 8.1. What is really identified in the OS as Windows Core, just Windows, which may be where the just Windows thing comes from. That will be phone and mini tablets, right? No desktop.
Phone and mini. Okay.
Yep.
So they're not going to call it. So for phone, they're not going to call it Windows 10. Windows.
No,
Phone
and
10.
by the way, that naming change is already happening, and I referenced this on Twitter today. I have a feeling no one understood what I was talking about. They did this before when Windows Mobile was known internally to be on the way out, but they hadn't announced what Windows Phone as we know it today. About a year before that happened, Microsoft started talking up something called Windows Phones. They were like, here's the new Windows Phone. You can look this up. It was about Windows Mobile, right? So Windows Mobile 6.5 or 6.5.1 or whatever that last release was called.
So going back to 2009.
It was the new Windows Phone, Yeah, so going back to like 2009. And I started writing articles about these Windows phones and how confusing this name was, and they were sort of changing the name from Windows Mobile, right? Because Windows Mobile goes back a ways. Windows Mobile goes back to the time when Microsoft made PDAs, and they made different kinds of phones. There were touch-based phones, and then there were phones that had like a keyboard, and you would use a stylus on the screen.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how they differentiated those. It doesn't matter, but they started simplifying it. Now these things are just Windows phones. It's one system. Windows Mobile was the system, but then a year later, they're like, oh, Windows Phone 7, right, series was a way to differentiate it from the previous, but the point being they dropped Windows Mobile before they dropped Windows Mobile.
Did they drop the Windows Mobile name when before Windows Phone 7 came out? Do you remember that weird in between one? I forgot what the code name was for that.
I think
everything was rounded. It had like a weird round UI. The honeycomb UI.
Yeah, that was the 6.5 UI. It was still Windows Mobile. That was 6.5. So
okay. And then there was one after that they never released.
Polaris. That was going to be Windows Mobile. That would have been Windows Mobile 7. So it doesn't matter. I mean, the details aren't important. What's important to note is people are already seeing this. HTC comes out and it's the HTC One M8 for Windows, and people are like, oh, what are they doing? They didn't put the phone on there, and you can see it in other places too. I just saw a Nokia thing that said the same thing, and that's what they're doing. They're getting you ready for this, and so the notion here is it's going to be it will be a Windows phone, if you will, with a small p, but it's Windows. The system is Windows, and the reason I think they're doing this. Well, but it's not just branding, right? It's easier for people to understand that this app runs everywhere because it's the same operating system. People understand that. When you say to someone, hey, you can run the same app on Windows and Windows Phone, they're like, really? It doesn't sound possible. But it's like, oh, you're running Windows on your phone now. Oh, so I can run those apps. Right. And by the time this thing comes out, there'll be that full-featured version of Office running with a universal app version of it, literally in that case, a universal app that will work on phones, and handsets or on mini tablets.
So the other thing or big tablets, the universal apps. I was reading MJ's live tweets, and she kind of hinted that she thinks, and I didn't see your tweet about this, so you tell me what you think. That the universal apps is the future of applications on Windows in general, and it's just we're moving away. This is going to be the future of apps. It's just everything else is now going to be legacy, but they're hoping that everybody moves over to a universal app at one point.
So as the developer platform exists today, the way I described it earlier is correct. As we move forward, it will become more universal in the sense that you'll be able to share more and more code between the apps that target little devices, big devices, game consoles, and whatever. I don't know how Microsoft is creating the next version of Office, or the touch version of Office, but they did say it's a universal app. And what that means is they will generate executables that run on phone as well as tablets. And so even if there's different apps under the covers, the functionality should be completely identical, And so whatever features are in the tablet version, you'll be able to get those in a phone. And I think this is the thing, people, look at phones and they think of them in a certain way, and they look at tablets and they think of them in a single way. But, we have all these crossover devices of all kinds. And if Windows Pro, I should have concluded the thought from earlier. So Windows by itself as the small one, Windows Pro as the one that runs on computers, 2-in-1s. And then Windows Enterprise for businesses. Obviously, they'll still do that, which is just Windows Pro with additional functionality. There are crossover devices. And so if you can cross over between a 2-in-1 and a laptop and a desktop, why can't you cross over between a phone, a phablet, and a mini tablet? I mean, aren't they're the same thing, really, right? I mean, a phone obviously has a phone in it, but I mean, we're talking about basically a radio, a microphone. Well, the other one would have a microphone too. It's basically just radio and an earpiece, I guess. I don't, it's really not that. Yeah, it's really not that complex.
It's it's an interesting leap they're taking, and overall, out of the people there, what was the feel about this? Were people in general, when they were presenting this, were they being cynical about certain things? Were they, saying like, okay, wow, this is actually what Microsoft needs to do? What was the overall, I guess, the morale of the people that were sitting there at the event?
It was mostly good. I mean, the truth is, most people. Oh, people. I mean, I'm talking about reporters here and bloggers, right? The people who would have been at the event. I think they want to see Microsoft get this one right, and I feel like they think they are getting it right with this version. You can be very cynical and make the little jokes like something old, something new. Microsoft brings back the blah blah blah. Microsoft takes a step back to move forward. There's all kinds of great jokes built into this, but listening to customers, providing what they want. Like I said earlier, providing an upgrade that makes sense for both Windows 7 users and Windows 8 users, regardless of the device type, regardless of which interfaces they prefer to use, touch versus mouse and keyboard. I mean, there's something profound going on there, because I think for a lot of people, when you look at Windows 8, you say, this thing was such a train wreck. There's no way to fix this. They're going to have to step back and walk away from this platform. And I think the one thing I think people still haven't digested yet is that app platform, that what they're now calling Universal Apps, sort of. I'm not actually sure that's the official name, but the Windows Store app platform. That thing is full speed ahead. They're not stepping back on that at all. They're stepping back from some of the draconian design decisions that were made to Windows 8. But that underlying app platform, which provides security and privacy through sandboxing, which provides very liberal license rights so you can use it on multiple computers, is all intact and is being improved and is going to be better and will work on your desktop. I mean, it's just going to be fine. And I think, to the Metro/Windows 8 haters, they need to understand that they're not walking back. This is not a step back. It's very.
I mean, it's a step forward. I mean, it's a step forward, because considering the fact that you could run this in desktop, these applications are going to be floating. You could run these applications outside of the new UI, the modern UI.
This is, right. This is the distinction that people kind of have trouble understanding. Windows, before there was this Metro thing, Windows already supported multiple runtimes, right? You could run web apps next to desktop apps, Win32 apps, you could run Java, you could have Adobe Air apps, you can have all these things floating around in your computer. They're all running next to each other.
When you mentioned that, I was actually thinking Adobe Air.
Yeah.
It's actually a good comparison.
Right. But, .NET apps, WPF apps. I mean, there's all these different runtime engines that exist in Windows. It's no big deal. We've had this for years. It goes back to NT. They support Unix subsystems and all kinds of stuff. None of it matters, whatever. But, the goal for Windows 8, good, bad, and different, was just that they have this new mobile platform. We're going to build it into Windows. It's going to sit side by side with the Win32 API, but we want to get people to move to it. So they, not in addition to having its own runtime, its own set of APIs, it's all that stuff, the sandboxing and separation and everything, they visually separated the environment from the desktop. And that was what I think it was Joe Belfiore, maybe both of them, both him and Terry Myerson, referred to it as kind of a duality. I've referred to it as a Frankenstein monster, where you take parts from different places and you kind of jam them together. You could think of it as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There's all kinds of ways you can compare this thing, but whatever. Greek theater, Janus, I could go on and on. The point is, you had these two things and they were different, and it required a modal shift, to go between them. None of that stuff behind the app platform goes away in Windows 10. It's just that the duality of the user experience goes away. Now you can run them side by side. It doesn't matter. And that's the way it should have been from the beginning. They had their own little baloney reasons why they couldn't do that the first time around. But
well, I mean, I understand what they were trying to do. The baloney reason was that they were trying to separate the two, and they were trying to phase out, the desktop to an extent, and they wanted this to be the future of Windows. But there's two things to remember here. One,
only two.
To me, multiple things. x86 x86 applications
Yep.
are going to be legacy applications in the future.
Oh,
I
they
mean,
still
it's
are.
always
And by
going
the
to
way,
run.
that hasn't changed. You know.
Yeah, you can still
I
run it,
Yep.
but
I'll tell
it,
you this. By the way, a year after Windows 10 comes out, if you look at the top 10 applications, new applications that have been written for Windows, I guarantee you that none of them will be major Win32 apps, but a lot of them will be universal apps.
yeah,
Win32 is still the
Win32, yeah.
past. It's still the past. It doesn't mean it goes away completely, but it's still, yeah.
Do you think the not the average user, right? But like the people watching the show. Uh, this somebody brought this up to me. They go, "Well, this is why I think desktop is going to go a long way. The applications, you can have a complex application right now, in as a Win32 application, but you're not going to really get that because the universal apps that are created for a tablet, a phone, and for the modern UI, and you can't get overly complex with these applications." Do you, I kind of see what he means, but we're also in the early stages of these
Right.
applications, and there's probably no
Yep.
need to have an overly complicated, a complex application running on RT currently.
Right. I mean, by the way, that will happen, and of course, we haven't seen the improvements they're making to that platform yet. And so that's an announcement that is yet to come. It doesn't really matter, but I think it will happen. I mean, I think you're going to see, we'll see Office will be the first one. Office for Windows Touch, or whatever they call it, will be the first major complex set of applications, certainly written for the platform. And we'll see. There's no reason you have
Office?
you have a platform that scales properly on screen resolutions and pixel densities. I mean, it's already technically sophisticated.
I mean,
There's no
Office on
reason.
the iPad is phenomenal. I mean, it's great.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a beautiful application. You can do everything that I need to do.
Well, but it's so you're right, and there's no reason the Office version for Windows couldn't be as good or better. But you're still taking a very dense set of functionality and reducing it down to its 10 or 20 or whatever number of most popular functions. And so when you take away, or I guess you start from scratch and you just cherry pick the stuff that's most important, it's very easy to come up with something that's clean and simple and easy to use. I mean, the trick is going to be, when will or when or if a future version of Photoshop will run in this environment, right? Just like in the old days, Adobe made Photoshop for Mac OS 10 Classic, but it took them a long time to port it to OS 10. But eventually they do. And then you say, oh, look, it's exactly the same. Of course it is. I mean, there's no reason Adobe Photoshop CS, however they name these things these days, 2-3 years down the road can't be just a full Metro. I keep wanting to call it Metro. A full
I mean,
universal app.
I mean, isn't Photoshop on the Chromebook now?
No. So that is it's funny because I saw that headline and I thought, wow, I really have to figure out how this happens, right? No. So they're streaming Photoshop for Windows, if I'm not mistaken, to a Chromebook using some sort of virtualization solution thing. It's a streaming of Photoshop over the web. It is in very limited invitation-only beta. You have to be an education customer of Adobe's to even be considered for it, and it's not Adobe Photoshop running on Chromebook. It is available via Chromebook, but again, very limited. It's not an app. It's not a Chromebook web app.
Okay, so pretty much they're running it on a Windows machine and through.
I'm not actually sure how they're doing it. I read through their stuff and they did not make this clear. But the thing they are saying is we're streaming this, meaning you've never heard the word streaming used to describe a web app. Web apps don't stream. They it's hosted in the web and it runs there, but no one has ever used the term streaming.
That's weird.
I think if you look at the Adobe stuff, what you'll discover is that they have streaming capabilities, similar to how Microsoft does that for Office through Office on Demand. Although in that case, you are installing something locally. So I don't know how they're doing it, but not yet. I mean, the point is, you as a Chromebook user can't subscribe to Adobe CC or whatever and get Photoshop on a Chromebook. You can't do that.
Yeah, you're not going to be. Well, I don't even know how. First of all, Chrome, it's a gigantic application. So it has to be
But that's the
web-based.
streaming. In other words, it's not right. It's running somewhere, not on your computer. Yeah, on your little dumb terminal in this case.
So I still have a lot of questions for you about Windows
Mm-hmm.
10. The chat room, if you're in the chat, or if you're watching on any number of our streaming partners, on Ustream, on Vaughn, or if you're listening to this on Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, and you got a chance, go to our chat room, gfqlive.tv. You could join the chat there. Over 100 people in there right now. Great conversations happening. And if you're in the chat right now, if you have a question, send it our way. Just, ask away, because I have a ton of questions for Paul, because I have been in La La Land for the last 2 days. I have no idea what I'm doing. We were working on the studio here, which we'll talk about on the post show after this. But I want to hear the questions. I want to see some of these questions, because I probably have the same exact questions. Dealing with a new application. The only thing I regret right now is that I haven't installed this yet, and I feel dumb that I haven't.
You know what though? When you do install it, you're going to say, "Oh, yeah, okay." It's funny
I'm
because
sure that's going to be it.
Because it really isn't. Windows 8 was insane, right? In many ways, this is like Windows 7. It's familiar.
Can we use that quote? Can we use that quote? Paul Thurrot. Windows 8 was insane.
Oh, I'm sure I've already. I'm sure I've already said that somewhere.
I want there to just be like you, a photoshopped image of you as a Mad Hatter, and it's just like the Windows 8 logo
Windows
everywhere.
8, yeah. Oh, I'm actually going to give a Windows 8 presentation next week. I could use that.
Are you really?
Yeah, good timing.
Yeah, that's great timing. So I want to take a little break. I want to talk about our Patreon campaign for a minute. I want to talk about a couple things. Guys, I really appreciate you guys have been awesome with this Patreon. Last week, we saw one of the best weeks that we have seen for Patreon. A lot of people have been signing up since we kind of brought the initial, donation suggestion down. Now, we've always said you can donate whatever you want. You can donate a nickel. You can donate 10 cents, whatever you can to help us out. We want to keep this show limited with the ads. We actually have an ad starting next week. But this is the thing. We want to advertise companies that we think are cool. We want to advertise one ad or two ads rather than doing 3 or 4 for the show. And the way that we could do that is by you guys supporting us and you guys funding us. So what you do, you go to patreon.com/whatthetech. You sign up. It'll suggest, I think it's like 50 cents or $1 right now. You can put in whatever you want. It's a recurring payment, so you will not be charged more than 4 times. Sometimes you charge less if we skip a week. Paul is traveling or I'm traveling. And then at the end of the month, they take the money and they send it our way, and it sits on a little account until we cash it out. That's how the system works for us. What you get is a bonus show. So after each What to Tech, we record What to Talk, where we talk about a number of things. Today, I'm going to be talking about my awful flight experience coming to Los Angeles. I was live tweeting my entire experience, and oh boy, people have no flight etiquette. It's a major problem here. It's an epidemic, actually. I like to call it an epidemic. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to also be talking about a little bit about what I've done here in the studio. So GFQ, patreon.com/whatthetech is a website. You can help us out there. Also, if you buy stuff on Amazon, guys, because I'm going to be redoing the studio back in New York. If you buy stuff on Amazon, we got a tiny little credit from each purchase. You go to gfq.co/Amazon, or if you're on our website, there's an Amazon banner. You could just click on that and bookmark it. And whenever you buy something on Amazon, we get a tiny little credit. We don't know what you're buying, so don't worry if you're buying something a little weird, because people buy some weird stuff on Amazon. We don't see who's buying anything. So you could just buy it and we get a little credit. I would like to see who's
buying stuff.
You know what? What?
I would like to see who's buying stuff.
I would love to see who's buying stuff.
It's too bad we can't see that.
A lot of adult stuff, Paul. People buy a lot of adult stuff on Amazon. I can't tell who's buying it.
So here's why. Okay, so I have never done that, and I wouldn't, but probably for a variety of reasons. But the big one is, as soon as you buy anything on Amazon, you start getting recommendations for stuff like the thing that you bought
on your page.
And this has gotten better. I think in Amazon now it will respect this is a gift checkbox or whatever. But in the past, I remember I bought my mother some middle-aged housewife type book, and it took me years to get rid of these recommendations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry to completely
No,
Destroy
no,
this.
no. I mean, that's actually funny because I had the same problem. Mine is the old recommendation. Whatever Jess buys, that's the recommendation because we share on my personal Amazon. On the one that you guys are buying, it's all GFQ stuff, so it's easy. But on my personal Amazon, it's all like Jess's purchases, and a lot of her friends are having kids, so it's all like baby stuff. It's like, oh, do you want the Fisher Price stroller?
Right.
And I'm like, no. Why is it all baby stuff? It's a hint, maybe. Maybe Amazon is giving
I
me
can
a
picture
hint.
you two walking around with pacifiers in your mouths, though, to be honest.
Well, sometimes I
You
do.
know?
Sometimes I do. So gfq.co/Amazon is the site, and help us out, support what we're doing, and keep us happy. I bought new sneakers, guys, and Paul needs new sneakers, so help us out. That's the Patreon money. Goes to our sneaker fund. So, Paul, let's talk a little bit more about Windows 10. Was there any surprise at all from this, other than the name change? But was there any surprise? Because this is what you do for a living. You have to keep up with
Yeah.
this. Was there anything you're like, huh? Okay, that's pretty cool. I didn't know about that.
No, I mean there were minor features I hadn't heard about yet, and they were generally welcome. Nothing major though. The continuum thing, I guess, was maybe the big one where they're actually going to support both environments, even on the same device. I thought that was kind of cool. Had not heard about that. There's some new snap functionality, which is you kind of hear it and you're like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, it's smart. Because if you think about snapping an application, not snapping on the desktop, but snapping a Metro app, like you want to run two things side by side, two Metro apps or maybe a Metro app and then the desktop. Aside from the fact that there are two snap environments in Windows 8, one for desktop, one for Metro, the weird thing about that is that when you snap something, the other half of the screen is just blank. And you as the user just has to know, like, well, I got to go to the desktop or I got to go launch another app. There's no indication what you're supposed to do next. In Windows 10, they put running apps already in little windows. So it's like Snap Assist. Here are some suggestions,
Okay.
It gives you a starting point. And when you see that, you're like, yeah, duh. Why?
That makes sense.
Why wouldn't it do that? Yeah.
I'm going through some of the questions that are sent to me right now. If you have, just send them my way in the chat. As far as OEM, I guess recommendations, have they stated anything specific for this version that they want the OEMs to do a little differently? Because with Windows 8, it was a big deal for the OEMs to kind of comply to their standards.
Right.
Did they mention anything like that for this one?
No, and that maybe is tied to what I was saying earlier. This notion that by explicitly embracing 2-in-1s in the design of the OS, I think they're sending sort of an implicit hint to people that, when you're making a computer, it should be a 2-in-1 type computer. And we have 2-in-1s today that are not Ultrabook form factors. We have these giant desktop things. You can pop the screen off and take it in the other room like a giant 21-inch tablet. And there's no reason it couldn't work, or there's no reason at all why it wouldn't work that way on such a device too. So I think they're just, Microsoft can make a Surface and say, look, we think 2-in-1s are the future. But I think when they put it into the OS like this, it's like, look, we really do think 2-in-1s are the future. And I think most PC makers would probably agree with that assessment too.
It's kind of funny because when Windows 8 came out, we were still, I think around that time, we were talking about, like, what is the future of the PC? Like, which device is it going to be? Is it going to be a 2-in-1? Is it going to be a convertible? Is it going to be, like the Surface, where the general purpose is that it is a tablet, but it has this, crappy keyboard, really. Like, it's still a transitional device. But
Right.
you're absolutely right. Microsoft's future and the future of the PC is a 2-in-1. It just, to what extent, right? Like, I think it has to be an equal balance, 50-50 of it being a 2-in-1. It can't be a really good laptop and a really crappy tablet, or a really good, like, the tablet feature is phenomenal, but the keyboard and the mouse are awful. So they have to find a balance of that. I still don't think we have gotten a great solution. I think the Surface is the closest that we've gotten. But
Yeah.
I mean, as someone that writes for a living, you're a blogger, you're a journalist. The keyboard is not really desirable
On the
on the
Surface.
Surface. Yeah.
Right. So I'm surprised we haven't seen third-party Surface Pro 3 in particular keyboards. I would, a hardware keyboard with an additional battery. Not that the battery is lacking per se on Surface Pro 3, but there are people who have to fly around the world pretty regularly and would enjoy better battery life. Whatever. I am surprised by that. The Surface Pro 3 type keyboard is pretty good, and it's a big the trackpad is a big improvement over the previous version, as is the ability for it to sit at an angle.
Overall, Paul, overall that device is a huge leap over the Surface 2, in my opinion. The display is stunning. The performance is great. I mean, it's a legitimate computer. You could use this thing all day.
It is, but for me, it's a little cramped. Computer. Like, I wish there was a bigger. Why couldn't this keyboard stretch to the edges of the cover? There's 2 inches of wasted space in this. This could have been a full size keyboard. Right now, it's a little. It's like playing music on a tiny little keyboard.
Well, you got big Boston hands. That's your problem.
I do. Yeah. No, it is definitely.
You're a big guy.
Yeah. No,
it is. Look at these dainty little fingers.
Right.
Everything works for me.
You have the hands of a woman. This is a Blackadder joke.
I have beautiful hands. Look at this. So soft. Hands. I have the hands of a man who's never lifted a thing in his life. it's like butter. No, I mean, that's a major problem. So do you feel that the 2-in-1, which 2-in-1 is the future of this? Is it something that's a convertible, or is it something that's detachable and it functions?
Right. I don't think it matters, and I don't know.
If a detachable 2-in-1 is the case, I think the days of the 15-inch monitor are slowly going to be phased away, and we're going to, it's going to be.
I don't think you need to worry about that. There's going to be both, just as there is today. So I wouldn't worry about. I don't think any one of them makes any more sense. I think for some people this is better. For some people this is better. I agree with you. I prefer a big screen Ultrabook. I don't think we're going to see a big, a 15-inch, or at least too many 15-inch Ultrabooks with a detachable keyboard. I think that type of machine, it needs the stability because the screen would be so heavy, and if the guts were in there, it would just, not make any sense.
It would just, it's an exciting change, really. It's exciting, but this now if I want to talk, let's talk about the Mac for a second. What does this mean for the future of Apple? Because they have been adamant in saying, we're not going to do this. We're not looking to do this. We're not looking to do this. But if they see that the PC market, which that's what Apple's become over the last couple of years, where they are following the trends. They are no longer setting the trends. I'm a Mac user, but I'm the first one to say, Apple has not really innovated as far as a cutting edge technology for the PC since the MacBook Air. And that was quite a few years ago. So do they follow the trend? If they see the success Windows 10 with these 2-in-1 solutions, is that going to be their transition as well, where this is where the market's going, this is what we're going to do, we can't just sell the traditional laptop anymore, it's just not cutting it? I'm curious on the long-term impact of this to the market.
So when you look at some of the computers that are coming out this holiday season, you see these $100, $200, $300 tablets, laptops, etc. The tablets are obviously touch devices, but on the PC side, they're not. And I think there'll always be some market for that. I can say I went and used that MacBook Air again on this trip with Windows. And I found myself, I touched the screen on this thing a lot, and I can tell you the MacBook Air screen doesn't do anything when you touch it other than leave.
Are you positive, or are you touching it wrong?
I keep touching it. I can't. It's hard to avoid. There's something about the Windows 8 UI where some of those buttons they're like an inch long and half an inch tall, and they you want to touch them. And
I'm pinching and zooming on this screen. It's not doing anything to you, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it's not doing anything. What's going on here? So they'll always be there. I mean, but increasingly they become like almost the ghetto of the PC world, right? Because they're not. They're the past,
Yeah. I mean, it's bizarre because they're so I don't know,
It's almost like there's like a stigma to it, you know.
like I feel like this is the last of the traditional desktop for a lot of people. You
Right,
know, like
right.
the Mac, like for me, and that's how I feel about the about OS X, where OS 10, where it's the last of the traditional desktop PC, where this is a desktop and this is what you do on it. Microsoft has totally changed that, and they said, well, no, you could do more than that. You could touch the screen, and you could go into a different UI if you want to. You could detach it. While
Yep.
Apple has separate devices for separate things, I what would be great for
Yeah,
Apple
but
to
you know
do?
what? Microsoft or Apple's. Yeah, I mean, Apple's business model is predicated on hardware sales. So of
Yeah,
course they have
not
a different
software.
device for every, that doesn't mean that that's the most efficient thing for users. It means it's the best thing for Apple. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
mean to be, weird about it, but that's what's best for Apple. It's not necessarily what's best for users. In fact, I would argue in those cases it's not.
I mean, Apple kind of would have a significant advantage over the fact that they have a real good ecosystem as far as iOS goes. It's mature to the point that almost every developer wants to put their application on there. They have a great ecosystem for music. They have a great ecosystem for video. Not saying that Microsoft doesn't have the same things, but Apple is far larger and has a far larger user base when it comes to their mobile ecosystem.
Yeah.
Why not integrate that into what they're doing with the traditional desktop? It's
Well, I
fascinating
think
to me that they're
they
not doing it.
they will. They have to. The first step to
I
it will probably be that rumored 13-inch iPad, whatever they're calling it, iPad Pro. It's inevitable. Their devices outsell their PCs by a factor of what, 100? I mean,
Oh
it's not
God,
even.
it's humongous,
Yeah,
humongous.
it's
It's
inevitable.
you know what I was noticing a lot, Paul. I was I was at the airport and I kind of look around what people are using, what technology they're using. I'm seeing less and less iPhones and less iPads being used,
Right.
around. It's mixed now. The total environment is mixed. Where 2 years ago it was all iPhones and all iPads. Now I'm seeing a lot of Samsung tablets. I saw a bunch of Surfaces. I saw a bunch of Windows phones. I almost want to like grab them. They're like lepers at this point. The people that are walking around with Windows Phone, like you see them a mile
Yeah,
away and you
yeah,
can spot them, and you're like, oh wow, this is weird. And then like you sometimes think, I'm like, is he like a normal user of a computer? Maybe he's a writer. Maybe he writes about Windows. Like I'm starting to like
yeah,
think. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
who are you and why are you using this
What is your problem? Yeah,
aggressively? Aggressively, I'm like, what's your problem? But
right.
I'm seeing that the ecosystem is kind of getting dispersed at this point. It, and it was interesting to see that. Like it wasn't like that 2 years ago. I didn't see too
Yeah,
many Android tablets walking around.
right, right. Well, I mean, the Android tablet thing is going to happen after the Android handset thing. I mean, already when you go out in the world, you see Android everywhere. You see iPhones everywhere too in the United States. I mean, I see iPhones all the time, but a lot of Android phones. And the Android stuff's a little weird because, in fact, the Android stuff makes it hard to spot Windows phones in some ways because you're so used to these phones all being different that they kind of get lost in the blur. Obviously some Nokia devices stand up because they're colorful or something, but with Android devices, it's often very hard. In fact, I don't remember the exact situation. But I was in a crowd of people, and there was a guy who kept bringing his phone up, and I kept looking at it, trying to figure out what it was. It was very thin and elegant looking and beautiful. You could tell from the UI on the screen it was Android, but I to this moment I have no idea what it was. And that's how Android is, kind of evolving because there's so many different devices now.
Something that I got a lot is a lot of people have been asking me about my OnePlus phone. A lot of
Yeah,
people are interested in the phone, and I've never had that happen. No matter, I mean, I've had a bunch of Android phones. I've never been stopped at a bar, at a restaurant, or even just using it at the airport, and people are like, "Hey, what phone is that? What phone is that?" Uh, and I'm
it's
and
because it's different.
I actually think, one, because it's different. Two, it's a large screen, and because the iPhone now has that gigantic screen, the 5.5 inch, I think people are a little bit more aware about these bigger screen devices. And, I showed one guy. I was sitting at a bar and I was showing the guy. I'm like, oh, this is the One Plus. And he's like, wow, it's actually pretty cool. It looks nice. They're like, they're asking how much it is. And I told him, I'm like, this thing is like $300, unsubsidized. You own the phone. You can take it wherever you want if you have, AT&T or T-Mobile. They were blown away by the fact that you could do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually think that the fact that Apple now has a larger screen, instead of people transitioning to iOS, it may bring a lot of people to Android because now they're aware that, okay, this is actually pretty cool, the bigger screen.
Well, okay. I don't know. I mean, I think the people who are going to Android went to Android. I mean, I think it's always going to be a big deal. I don't think Apple's going to help Android per se. They've I keep doing that. They've made the market for big screens legitimate, since I can't say that word. But I don't think they're not going to be.
Have you seen one in the wild yet? The 5.5-inch iPhone?
Other than mine?
Other than yours?
No, not in the real world. Although, remember, I just went to Twit, so I saw a bunch of them there because everyone there is kind of an Apple-loving, whatever customer. So I saw some of them there, but
I have yet. No,
I've actually not seen an iPhone 6 of any kind in the real world. But that's going to change. Obviously, they just sold a cajillion of them. So I bet most of them are small. Surprised. I think most of them are going to be the small one.
Yeah. I was just at the first one I actually saw was I did the 404 show on CNET. I don't know if you catch that ball. With Ayaz, I co-hosted.
And I mean, I saw that you did it. I was away when it happened, but yeah.
People were very happy or they hated me. It was one or the other. There was no middle.
Okay.
I told a 10-minute story about how I hate zippers. So the show took a very strange turn about how I think the entire world should abandon zippers and go to Velcro.
Yeah.
Because zippers are ridiculous. Nobody cares for a zipper. They break, and it's just archaic in my opinion. So Velcro everything. NASA uses Velcro, so why can't we? So, we were doing a show, and my wife does not want the bigger iPhone. She doesn't want the 4.7-inch iPhone. She is fine with the 4-inch iPhone.
Right. I think most people would not. I mean, that makes sense to me. It's just too big. And if you were using an iPhone before, actually, the 4.7-inch it's a fairly natural step up. When you compare those two next to each other, they kind of make sense. But when you go to the 5.5, it's like the 5. There's something weird about it. It just looks humongous.
I wouldn't buy the 5.5.
How big it is.
It's bigger than my phone. It's bigger. The 5.5.
I already have a phone that is that big, and I still think it's big. I just find it to be very oddly big.
I think what throws it off, it's not so much the screen size because I have the One Plus and that's a 5.5-inch screen, and I've even used a Note 3 and that's a bigger screen too. But I think the awkwardness of that iPhone is the fact that you have that the Touch ID, and you need extra room on the bottom. So now you need that extra room on the top as well. So it's a weird feel in your hand. Like it doesn't feel natural in your hand. Where the 4.7 I think feels great, but my problem with the 4.7 is that I would have gone to a 5-inch display. I think the 4.7 is just a tiny bit too small. Just a tiny bit.
I do wish it was 5 inches personally, but again, I think this is more about managing the upgrades. They have so many users on these tiny phones. I just think that might have been. I agree with you. I wish it was 5. 5 and 6. What's the difference at this point? But I just think that I don't. There were probably other reasons they did it, but I think 4.7. However, for whatever reason, it just seems like a more natural step up. From the original.
I agree with you 100%, but I have met so many people that are adamant on not jumping ship. They don't want to go to the 4.7. They love the 4-inch display, and and the reason why they say this is because they could put it in their pocket. And
no. By the way, I completely get that.
And I don't want to make this a guy phone or a girl phone, but majority of the people that have said that are female, and they've said,
No. Look,
women wear tighter jeans, and it doesn't fit the bigger phone.
No, there are trendy guys in San Francisco and in New York and elsewhere that also wear skinny jeans and they're little people and whatever. I mean, it's fine. I actually do think this is something Apple's going to have to address next year, right? And I think the way they do it, well, I don't know how they do things, but I mean, I think there are a couple ways. They could continue pushing forward with the previous design and put new chipset in it. Or they could make an iPhone 6S class device that basically is the design of the iPhone 6s we see today, but just in a smaller package. And by the way, a phone like that, especially if the next gen chips allow for this, for having better battery life and so forth. A phone like today's iPod Touch, which is like super thin, would be kind of amazing. And I think there is a market for that kind of stuff. You'd be able to snap it in half like a dry cracker, but I do think there is a market for it. Yeah, I do.
I'm curious what they're going to do with the next. Not probably they'll still have the smaller display with the next generation iPhones. They'll still sell maybe the older iPhone, but how about two generations?
It's going to be based on their upgrades, right? It's going to be based on, like, if they see a significant portion of the user base not moving forward or actual upgrades to a 5S this year, that's going to tell them, we got to do something about this. We can't abandon this space. We can't just go forward with this old phone. We have to, and that might mean an iPhone 6 class device with a smaller screen.
So before we wrap up, I want to talk about Bendgate. Okay.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of misconception about this thing. There's a lot of misinformation going around.
Yeah.
There's over 10 million iPhones have been sold right now.
Yes.
And people are now going on YouTube, taking their phones, and they go, look at this thing, and they're snapping these things in half. They're doing it. They're pushing it.
Yeah. I wish they wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Consumer
that is
Reports,
so alarming.
It's nuts. This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. So Consumer Reports did a legitimate study of this. And there was another group that did a very scientific study of this and to determine if this is a legitimate problem. Apple is claiming that only 9, this is as of last week, only 9 users have legitimately bent their phone in that manner. There have been 9 phones that they have replaced because of this. 9 out of 10 million is a non-event, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit, by the way. But yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's what Apple's saying. It's bullshit that they're breaking in their pocket, or it's bullshit that Apple's saying 9?
9 is bullshit. But that said, I think that this issue is also bullshit. So it doesn't really matter. I think
so. This is a study. It requires normal use, everyday use of your phone is 50 pounds of pressure when you're holding this thing. You're going through 50 normal use, normal everyday use of your phone. You're putting 50 pounds.
At what point are we pressing on it to 50 pounds of? I don't understand how that's even possible.
That's what the article was saying. I guess if you're holding.
I wonder if that's like
50 pounds
pocket use. I wonder if it's you put it in your pocket and that's 50 pounds.
I think what they were doing was 50 pounds of you holding it tightly. Like obviously you're going to hold it less tightly or more, but in your pocket. So Consumer Report did this thing. I think the Galaxy Note 3, it bent. At the point of bending, it was 120 pounds of pressure. And they did a bunch of other phones, and some were 90, some were 100. This was 70 to 90 pounds of pressure. So at 70 or 90, it started bending.
I have to say, I find myself in the odd position of not actually agreeing with Consumer Reports methodology in this case, too. There's a lot of craziness to this story because I actually think that this is a non-issue. I actually don't believe that iPhones bend any more or less than other phones, and I just don't think that that's a problem. The problem is really just around the notion of behavior. People you were talking about people who have these smaller iPhones and they pop them in their pockets. A lot of those guys upgrade and then they pop the thing in the pocket, and for the first time, it's used that way. I don't think most people are sitting on an iPhone. I don't think that most people, when they put their phone in their pocket, are putting it at the point where the body bends and the thing has some kind of pressure on it. I think you put your phone in your pocket, you sit down, it's on a straight level plane. This is not something that we ever really need to worry about. And so,
Sure.
Artificially trying to press on something with a machine is just like doing a benchmark test. It's not really a real world
It's not
kind
a
of
real
thing.
world. No.
So
No.
I'm not really super excited by that. But the proof that we need is just the real world thing. What happens out in the world. People walking into an Apple store and and trying to break the thing. Those people are jerks. That's
they're
stupid.
idiots. Yeah.
That's stupid.
The fact that you're going to put this phone in your front pocket and by sitting because you have your jeans are a little tight. First of all, because I wear tight jeans. I never have my phone in my pocket ever because they don't fit. Right. So, one, it's very uncomfortable. Two, your jeans are going to at 50 pounds of pressure on jeans, that will tear your jeans.
Sure.
You're going to start seeing a tear in jeans at 50 pounds. At 30 pounds of pressure, you'll probably see a tear in your jeans. I don't think this is happening. I think it.
I don't either. I think it's
complete.
I think it's all baloney. It's just baloney.
You know how I can see it happening, Paul? Here's a great example. Okay, I'm sitting down. My jeans are in my pocket, and some people stand up like this. They put their hands on their legs and they'll stand up.
Oh, they actually do the. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I'm doing it right now. If I'm
doing
this,
people who
you know what? I could do it. I could bend them.
You don't have to tell iPhone users to take care of their phone.
How dare you?
How dare you? They know that. There's a reason these inch-thick OtterBox things are the best-selling accessory in the history of mankind, dating back to the floppy drive for the iMac, which was the previous bestseller. They get it. You know
what this is like? This is and why aren't we hearing complaints about the thousands of broken iPhone screens, millions walking, in this world right now? I've not met one person that has not broken their screen on their iPhone. Why isn't this becoming a major story?
Oh, I can tell you why. Because now you can get that screen fixed for $109 or less, depending on the kind of machine you have. Well, you know what? Not bad.
It's like $20. It's like $20.
No, seriously, that's not bad. I hear that. I don't want to do it 6 times a year, but if you break your screen, there's a reason you see broken screens. It's too expensive to fix. Now it's not. That's how Apple solves this problem. They don't have to engineer anything to the phone. Just make it inexpensive to fix it.
We have to be responsible the way that we use our products. Really, it's design flaw, whatever.
You can't.
It's a little weaker.
This is not. This is baloney. It's baloney.
I don't care what phone you have. If you're putting pressure on it, you are risking damaging the story. There's not a big conspiracy. There's not a cover-up. Put a case on your phone. If you're that concerned about breaking your phone, even a soft plastic case around it will stop this. Cover your phone with a screen. I have never broken a phone. No, it's never happened in my life because I'm aware of my phone. I'm aware of what I'm doing with it. I'm aware of where I'm putting it. I have it in a case, and I treat it as like I would treat any other hardware that I own. I think it's a very difficult thing to people understand that you are responsible for these products. Don't blame Apple. Don't blame Samsung. If there is a fundamental flaw in it, they will fix it. And if there was a major flaw in it, there would be more than 100 people, more than 1,000 people complaining about this. It's a small fraction of people. We have to stop this area.
The iPhone, iOS, Apple, whatever you want to complain about, has very legitimate problems that you can complain about, and this just isn't one of them.
100%.
The antenna gate thing that happened with the iPhone 4 was absolutely true. And you can go back and look at the Steve Jobs biography, and there were guys at Apple that said, we cannot design it this way. This is the opposite of good reception. This design will destroy this phone. It's not going to work. And nope, Jobs and I said, no, this is the design we want. We're going with it. It's just what we're doing. And they paid the price, for that, and with a lot of bad PR. And people say, "Oh, it works fine. I use it all the time." Yeah, sure, whatever. That problem is real, and this problem is not real. That's the difference.
You know what's a big problem? Which astonishingly, the media didn't cover the battery, the awful battery life on the iPhone 5. It took them 2 years to fix this, and guess what? They're not fixing all of them. The
Yeah.
battery is
So
absolutely garbage, and to the point that my wife has had 3 iPhone 5s, 3 of them. They've
okay.
swapped them out every time at the Apple Store, which Apple's very good at that. I have to give them a lot of credit. You bring them a phone, there's a problem. These guys don't care. They just give you a new one from the back. It's
Okay.
every time she's gone. The battery on these things is to the point, and I don't want to hear the BS where you could turn off this and turn off that and turn off the GPS and turn off the antenna and put it into Wi-Fi mode. I shouldn't have to do that, and that doesn't even help. The battery on these things is the worst that I've ever seen, to the point that the second you unplug it, it'll go to 85%. I mean, it's atrocious. But nobody's complaining about that because it's not sexy. That's not a sexy problem. The fact that you could go on YouTube and take your phone and snap it in half, that's sexy to people. That they're going to get hits. They're going to talk about it.
A phone that snaps in half is an awesome story. A smartphone that gets lower than average battery life is not particularly interesting to anybody. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
right. They all do. Actually, I think one of the best stories about the iPhone 6 is the battery life. It's commendable.
Yeah.
You know?
Bottom line, guys, don't bend your phones.
Yeah, don't
snap them in half. Take care of them. Put it in a case. Cover the screen so you're not scratching it.
I joke about it because it's funny, but
yeah,
this is not a real issue. I'm not worried about my phone. The iPhone 6 that I have, the 6 Plus, the worries I have nothing to do with bending. They have to do with the screen breaking, screen scratching, the back scratching. I want to take care of it, but I'm not worried. The screen bending? What are you kidding me? Or the whole thing?
Suncast in our chat said it perfectly. Just don't use your phone and nothing bad will happen. Just don't use it. Just put it away in a glass case.
If you don't want to be hacked,
yeah,
don't connect to the internet. Just a thought.
I treat my iPhone like the Hope Diamond. It's on display twice a year.
Right.
And I take it away. I can't put a phone in my pants. My jeans are so tight. I mean, it's obscene at this point.
I don't have that problem, but I see what you're saying.
I'm a hip dude. You're
a hipster.
All right, guys. Time to wrap it up. We did an hour. This was fun, Paul. I had a lot of fun. By the way, this is not my studio. This is not going to be my setup every week. I'm in LA. I'm visiting Spencer, and then I'm actually going down to San Diego, which we'll talk on the post show. But we did some changes here at the studio. I actually like doing the show from here. I feel like a real radio guy. We have a phone line too. I could just hit a button and take a phone call.
Wow,
it's amazing. All right, guys, go to our website, gfqnetwork.com, if you missed any portion of the show. You could also catch it on winsupersite.com. Paul posts the show each week. Last week, what we did something different with the show. We posted our YouTube video, and I did not get a lot of complaints from people. So I guess that's a good thing. Our servers are getting hammered whenever we release this, and the download speed is awful. So what we're doing to take the load off the server, we're using YouTube for our video embed. So if you're still experiencing the problem, just let me know. We're trying to work on something. We're trying to fix something here, and maybe we're going to move to a new server. But that's taking so much time because we need to make sure with the third move that we do, it actually works. So let us know. Guysfromqueens@gmail.com is the email address. WinSupersite.com, all things Windows and Paul and technology. One of my favorite sites, honestly, to go to. I have stopped going to the big three tech blogs. I just go to WinSupersite every day, and I get real news from a real man.
Well, I can vouch for the real man part, but sure.
Real news. Follow Paul on Twitter @Thurrot. You can follow me @Andrew Zarian. Also, you can follow the GFQ Network @GFQ Network. If you want to see me on the 404 show I did with Ayaz, Ayaz was hosting a show I was co-hosting at CNET last week. It's also posted on our website, gfqnetwork.com. If you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see it right there, and just watch it. It's a YouTube video. Let me know what you think. I thought it was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun doing it. And that's it, guys. We will see you all next week. Bye-bye for now.